Hey everybody, this is Throbby with Large Lads Studios, and today we're talking about our favorite games of 2025. Before we get into the list, I just want to be clear about something up front. This is our list based entirely on the games that we actually played and enjoyed. This is not the definitive best games of 2025. This isn't based on Metacritic or sales numbers. If a huge game came out and I didn't play it or nobody on the team played it, it's not going to be here. Sorry about that. If it's critically acclaimed and it bounced off me, it's not here either. This list is 100% subjective, and I think it's actually more interesting that way. You can see what we enjoy here at the studio. And honestly, 2025 to me hasn't really felt like the strongest year for new releases. There's some great games up top. I just feel like other years just has been loaded, and I've had an issue finding out how I can only put 10 games on the list. This year, I kind of felt like I had an issue fitting 10 games on the list that I actually love that came out this year. And that's not because there weren't a lot of good games. Maybe it's because my time has been split. This year, I've been juggling game development, YouTube, and everything that comes in between, including a newborn. So I just haven't had all that much time to play and sink myself into games as I've had before. And when you're deep into making some games, especially system-heavy stuff, you just don't play games the same way. And yeah, quick plug here. If you don't know, we're currently working on Winterreach Emporium, a cozy fantasy shop management game where you manage a ski shop on the top of a cold mountain. It is a hardcore management game. Think research systems, selling, all of that stuff. It's eaten a lot of time this year in a good way, but it's definitely changed how many games I've got around to playing. So if that looks fun to you, please go on Steam and wishlist it. The link is in the description. All of that being said, everything on this list earned its spot. These are the games that we stuck with. These are the ones that we keep thinking about. These are the ones that we'd actually recommend without hesitation. We enjoyed these. Let's get to the list, and we're actually going to start with our honorable mentions for our favorite games of 2025. These are games we really enjoyed, spent time with, and genuinely respect. They just didn't stick with us quite as much as the ones that made the top 10. First up in our honorable mentions is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. This game honestly caught us off guard. It came out of nowhere, people kept recommending it, and once we spent some time with it, we immediately understood the appeal. At its core, it is an ambitious Elder Scrolls-style RPG from a small studio with heavy Oblivion and Skyrim energy, but it's wrapped in a bleak, oppressive, and almost gothic take on King Arthur mythology. The atmosphere is easily the strongest part. The world is haunting, strange, and constantly makes you want to explore just a little bit more. That said, it is very flawed and the release was rough. The combat is clunky, hit detection feels off, performance can be rough depending on the platform, and visually can look dated. You really have to meet it on its own terms. For us, that's why it lands as an honorable mention instead of cracking the top 10. We love the idea, the world, the ambition, but its rough execution held it back. Still, if you're an old-school RPG fan who values atmosphere, exploration, and weird worlds over polish, this is absolutely worth your time. Next up in our honorable mentions is The Altars. This one is genuinely cool and felt different, and that's the big reason it almost made our top 10. The easiest way I can describe it is imagine Fallout Shelter, but in full 3D, with a dense story, real characters, RPG-style decisions, and then you layer in planetary exploration, survival pressure, and even a little bit of Death Stranding connect the world building. The hook is strong. We're playing as John, stranded alone on a hostile planet until we start creating altars, different versions of ourselves, based on life paths we could have lived. And they aren't just copies for the sake of gameplay. They have personalities, needs, strengths, and they can even turn against you if you mismanage them. What we loved is the balance. It's time management and delegation, but it doesn't feel like an oppressive survival grind. The characters' writing and voice acting can do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the choices can get stressful in a way that actually matters. So why is it an honorable mention for us? Mostly because some parts, especially the storage and inventory friction, start to feel like survival game tedium, and the outside exploration can feel a bit clunky compared to the base game and character management. But overall, if you want something unique, story-driven, and system-heavy, The Altars absolutely deserves to be on your radar. Coming in at number 10 is The Outer Worlds 2. Obsidian actually had a really interesting year between Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2. It felt like a really big moment for the studio, two very different RPGs trying to show us different sides of what they could do. For us, though, The Outer Worlds 2 was the one we enjoyed more. The writing is sharp, the humor lands, and the companions and dialogue still do that classic Obsidian thing where choices actually feel like choices. It's comfortable in a good way. That said, it didn't feel quite like the ambitious leap forward we were expecting. Combat is better, systems are cleaner, but structurally it plays things pretty safe. There weren't many moments where we felt genuinely surprised. So it lands at number 10, not because it's bad, far from it, but because it feels more like a refined sequel than a bold evolution of what we were promised. Still, if you like Obsidian-style RPGs with personality and choice-driven storytelling, this is absolutely worth your time. Coming in at number 9 is Hades 2, and we want to be really clear up front. Hades is a masterpiece. Supergiant absolutely nailed the combat, art direction, music, and storytelling again. On a pure craftsmanship level, this game is incredible. That said, we've just never been huge roguelike people. Me specifically. We appreciate the genre, we respect it, but not usually where we spend most of our time. And that personal preference plays a big role in where this lands on our list. Even so, Hades 2 does everything right. The combat is still tight, the presentation is beautiful, and the new systems and characters are genuinely well done. It just didn't hook us in the same long-term way that some of the more open-ended and systemic games higher on the list did. So for us, it lands at number 9, not because it falls short, but because it's operating in a genre we admire more than we live in. If you like roguelikes, this could easily be your game of the year. It's just not for us. Coming in at number 8 is No, I'm Not a Human. And this one is probably my surprise of the year. Because generally speaking, we're not big horror or creepy game people. We don't usually seek out games that are designed purely to make us uncomfortable. But this one worked. Instead of relying on cheap jump scares or constant tension, it leans heavily into psychological unease. That slow, creepy feeling that something is wrong, even when you know nothing is happening. It messes with your expectations, your trust in the world, and sometimes your trust in yourself. What stood out is how restrained it is. It doesn't overly explain itself, it doesn't bombard you with systems, and it knows exactly when to pull back. The confidence is what kept us engaged instead of pushing us away. So while we wouldn't suddenly say we're horror fans now, No, I'm Not Human earns its spot because it found a way to hook us despite our usual preferences. If you like unsettling, thought-provoking games, even if you don't normally play horror or creepy games, this one is absolutely worth checking out and, like I said, is my surprise game of the year. Coming in at number 7 is Dispatch. This one honestly surprised us. Going in, the trailers didn't really hook us and we weren't really sure what to expect. But once we started playing, it clicked pretty quickly. Dispatch feels like the spiritual continuation of the classic Telltale style games, and that makes sense given the team behind it. It's very story-forward, very character-driven, and extremely light on traditional gameplay. If you're not into narrative-heavy experiences, this one's probably a deal-breaker. There's a lot more watching and reacting than actively playing. What really carried it for us is the writing and performances. The superhero setting is fun, but it's the characters that do the heavy lifting. The voice acting is genuinely strong, and Aaron Paul, in particular, does a great job grounding the main character in a way that makes us actually root for him. The dispatching mechanic itself is simple, but it works just enough to keep us engaged between story beats. And the episodic format made us genuinely look forward to the next chapter. It lands at number 7 because, while we really enjoyed it, it's very much of a story-first experience, and the limited interactivity keeps it from climbing higher. Still, if you miss narrative-heavy games with heart, this one is absolutely worth your time. Coming in at number 6 is Peak, and for us, this one lands here almost entirely because of how fun it was to play with friends. This is the kind of game that turns into stories immediately, yelling at each other, making bad decisions, barely surviving, and laughing about it afterwards. Mechanically, it's pretty simple, but that's actually part of why it works so well with co-op. You're constantly helping each other, screwing each other over by accident, and improvising when things go wrong. Every run feels just a little bit different depending on who you're playing with and how it's coordinated, or uncoordinated. What really stood out to us is how naturally the game creates those you had to be there moments. It doesn't force complexity, it just lets the chaos happen, and that's where the fun comes from. It doesn't climb higher on this list because outside of group play magic, there isn't a ton of depth compared to some of the bigger games. But as a pure co-op experience, Peak absolutely delivers, and it earns its spot here by being one of the most consistently fun games that we played this year. Coming in at number 5 is Split Fiction. Hazelight has become the studio for co-op games, and we're absolutely the target audience for this kind of experience. If you've played A Way Out or It Takes Two, you already know the vibe, and Split Fiction very much continues that legacy. What really stood out to us is just how creative and constantly changing the game is. It never sits still. You're jumping between sci-fi, fantasy, action, puzzles. Entire gameplay genre shifts from level to level, and it keeps throwing new ideas at you instead of stretching out one mechanic too thin. The co-op design is really where this game shines. This isn't just a play next to each other co-op, you actually have to communicate, adapt, and work together. Messing up, laughing about it, yelling at each other, and then finally pulling it off is a huge part of the fun. We do have some nitpicks. The characters didn't fully click with all of us, and the dialogue can lean a bit cheesy at times, but the heart and the ambition and the sheer fun factor carried hard. Split Fiction lands at number 5 because it is one of the most genuinely enjoyable co-op experiences we had this year, and a real reminder that fun still matters most. Coming in at number 4 is The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion Remastered. And this one's kind of a little unfair. I know it's a remastered game, but I really enjoyed it, so I had to throw it on the list. This release was really wild because it basically shadow dropped, and the moment it was available, we jumped in immediately. And honestly, it's kind of what we wanted. Oblivion, as we remember it, but looking like a modern game. The big story here is the hybrid approach, Unreal Engine 5 visuals on top of the old school Oblivion bones underneath, so it's not a full remake, but it's also not a lazy port. It's still the same weird, charming 2007 RPG, just dramatically upgraded visually. Towns, NPCs, weapons, enemies, everything looks fully realized in a way that feels surreal if you grew up with the original. And we love that they kept the game intact. All the classic quests are here, all the charm is here, and it even includes the DLC like Shivering Isles and Knights of the Nine, which is a huge win. But it also has some issues. The jank is still there, the quest log can still be very vague, and the level scaling is still the same infamous mess. And performance, especially on console, can be a little disappointing for a $50 remaster. So it lands at number 4, because it's an incredible way to experience Oblivion again, especially for new players. But it's not quite the definitive experience, fully modernized version we were hoping for. At number 3, we've got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And yeah, the wait was worth it. This is one of those sequels that feels uncompromised. It doesn't try to reinvent itself for mass appeal. It just takes what made the first game special and made it bigger, smoother, and more confident. Better production visuals, bigger regions, better presentation, and most importantly, it launches in a way better state than the original ever did. The core loop is still what we love. It's an RPG of setbacks. You start out broke, fragile, and getting your teeth kicked in, and slowly you earn every inch of progress. It can feel frustrating early, especially if you're new, but that's exactly why it becomes so rewarding once you click with it. And where it really impressed us is just how reactive it is. The game accounts for you failing, improvising, sneaking, talking your way out, and just completely screwing something up. And it keeps moving with new outcomes and new dialogues. It's the kind of RPG where failing a check can be just as interesting as succeeding. Combat is still demanding, and yeah, some systems are still obnoxious. The save rules and lockpicking can be brutal, but that's also part of the identity. We've got it at number 3 because it delivers a rare kind of immersive, old-school adventuring that barely exists in modern games anymore. And it does it better than almost anyone. At number 2, we've got Clair Obscure's Expedition 33, and this is easily one of the biggest standouts of the year for us. This game comes from a brand new studio, Sandfall Interactive, and it honestly feels like they swung for the fences right out of the gate, and somehow nailed it. It's clearly inspired by old JRPGs like Final Fantasy, Persona, and Lost Odyssey, but it never feels like a copy. It has its own identity, its own world, and a premise that hooks you immediately. The story is a huge reason this landed so high. The idea of a world where people die off year by year, and entire expeditions are set out knowing it may be their last, gives the game real weight. The performances are excellent, the direction is confident, and emotional moments genuinely land without feeling forced or overly quippy. Combat is turn-based, but it's more active and demanding than we expected. Dodging, parrying, tight timing, and layered character mechanics make fights tense and strategic, especially boss battles. It's challenging, sometimes brutal, but incredibly rewarding once it clicks. It's not flawless, the UI can be cluttered, platforming is rough, and navigation can be annoying, but none of that overshadows what it does right. Expedition 33 earns the number 2 spot because it's a bold, memorable, single-player RPG that feels fresh in a year full of safe bets. And it stuck with us long after we finished. And at number 1 is Europa Universalis V. This probably isn't a surprise to anybody who's been watching the channel. Europa Universalis V is our number 1 pick because it's Paradox doing what they do best, pushing the genre to an almost unreasonable extreme. This game tries to simulate everything: population, terrain, culture, religion, logistics, trade, governance, all across a 500-year timeline, and somehow most of it actually works. The map is insanely detailed, nation management feels deeper than ever, and just planning cities, roads, and economies can eat hours without even touching a war. If you're into grand strategy, this game is addictive. That said, It is rough in some places, balance is a little messy, the AI can do some absolutely unhinged things, and some campaigns end up feeling more what happened than historical-ish. This is classical Paradox early days stuff, but even with the turbulence, the foundation here is unreal. Performance is solid for how much it's simulating, and the moment-to-moment decision-making is already addictive as hell. So yeah, EU5 isn't perfect, but it's the most ambitious, exciting strategy game we've played this year, and it's exactly the kind of game we lose ourselves in. With time and patches, this could be genre-defining, and honestly, we already can't stop playing it. So that's our list. Our top 10 games of 2025 based entirely on what we actually enjoyed playing and had the most fun with. Speaking of that, if you've stuck around this long and you like cozy fantasy games, management sims, or just watching small teams build weird projects they care way too much about, go check out Winter Reach Emporium in the description below. It's our game and has been our obsession all year. Let us know in the comments what your top game of 2025 was, what we missed, and what you think we got completely wrong. And if you enjoyed the video, liking helps a ton, subscribing helps even more, and we'll see you in the next one.